Chapter 4 of The Finding of Jasper Holt by Grace Livingston Hill. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 4. She stood for an instant, framed in the opening of the trees, her eyes bright, her lips parted, her cheeks pink with the exertion of picking the berries. Both her hands were full of the fruit. "Oh, good morning," she said shyly before he could think what to say. "I hope I didn't waken you. I am sure you needed to sleep longer." His eyes glowed with admiration, and he stood startled at her beauty, marveling that she had accomplished a toilet with so little at her command. "How about you?" he said, watching her with admiring glance. "You didn't need any sleep at all, I suppose. You were just about all in last night, and no mistake." "Yes, I guess I was," she answered penitently, "and I'm afraid I gave you a lot of trouble, not being able to walk when I should. I can never thank you enough. You saved my life, of course. I never should have got to shore—" "Forget it," he said with a smile. "It was nothing." "And you had to carry me a long distance. I am sure you did. I can remember a long time when I knew I was not walking. You must be worn out." "Why, you're not heavy," he said amusedly, eyeing her slender frame. "I could carry you a good deal farther than that and not play out. I'm glad to see you look so rested this morning. I didn't expect it after what you went through. I see you have your nerve with you. It was a pretty nervy thing you did, you know, that stunt of dropping out the window. I had just got out myself further down and climbed on shore to see if there was anything I could do for anyone, when I saw you drop, and I thought you were gone for sure. There were rocks and timbers all around there, and heavy things falling, and I thought I saw your finish." "And so you came and rescued me," she said, with a look of gratitude that brought a flush over his strong, tanned face. "Oh, I just floated over that way to see if I could pick up anybody. I couldn't tell who I was fishing out when I took hold of you, there were so many sounds and things around." "Well, I can't thank you enough now," she said, and there was a glisten of tears in her eyes. "I know it was wonderful what you did." "Oh, forget it," he said again, laughing lightly. "It was bad enough all around, and we were lucky to get off as we did. But we aren't out of the woods yet. We'd better let bygones be bygones for the present, anyway. Don't you want to sit down?" Jean smilingly acquiesced, dropping down beside the rock with her berries, and leaning over to arrange them with the rest. "These ought to be washed," she said as she arranged them on the leaf plate in the center. "But I couldn't find any water." "Water won't be so hard to find, but we haven't anything to put it in," he answered, laughing. "And besides, we oughtn't to mind a little dirt after all we've been through. I doubt if the berries I usually get are washed anyway. But if I had anything to carry it in, I'd find some water. I haven't even a hat." "Why, I had a little drinking cup, but I don't remember whether it's in my bag or not. Perhaps I put it in the suitcase, though I think I left it in my bag." She laid down the last berries, and wiping the stains from her fingers on the grass, she opened the bag which she had slipped through the belt of her robe and made to hang at her side. It was rather full, and when it was opened the leather wallet, wrapped in its damp paper, fell out on the ground, and the paper came unfolded, revealing what it contained. The young man stooped gravely, a dark flush rising to his cheeks, and picked it up. He did not look startled nor surprised, and she noticed nothing strange in his manner as he handed it to her. Afterward she wondered at that. The cup did not materialize, but there were the two little wax paper envelopes which might hold water. She held them out to him, and looking up, their eyes met. "Why, you are the man who sat opposite to me in the day coach," she said in pleased surprise. "I didn't recognize you before without your hat on. But I remember thinking when I went to the other car that you had a face that one need not be afraid of. I was a little frightened by the old man who sat with you. He spoke to me, but when I saw you I was not afraid any more. Mother says I'm always going by my intuitions, but I think this time you've proved them true. I knew you were a person to be trusted." He looked at her wonderingly, a strange expression of wistfulness crossing his face. "People don't often feel that way about me," he said in a strange, low tone that seemed to hide a good deal more behind the words than was said. "I guess you're the first person who has trusted me in a long time." "Oh," she said, looking at him seriously, "I guess you don't know, or else—" She paused as if in doubt whether to finish the sentence. "Or else what, please?" he asked with compelling gaze. "I was going to say, or else they don't know you, but that sounds rather bold for a stranger to say when I've only known you a few hours. But I've had opportunity to prove that what I thought about you was true. Perhaps it's that you do not always let people see the nice things in you the way you have had to let me because of my need." "Well, that's a new way of painting my character, I must say. I rather like it myself, but I doubt if anybody would recognize it for me. I wouldn't mind being that way, believe me, and I thank you for sizing me up in that style. I'll think it over, but I'm afraid you've got your characters mixed, and I'm not in your line at all. However, I'm glad you think so. Now I'll see what I can do about water." He took the 2 envelopes as if they had been cut glass goblets and walked away into the woods. In a few minutes he returned with them dripping, his own face ruddy with recent washing, and his curls still damp and dark above his forehead, while the strong hands that held the would-be cups were clean as water could make them. "Would you like to wash your face?" he asked as he held out the cup for her to drink. "Never mind the berries, they are all right as they are. I'll show you the water and then come back to guard the food. We don't know what wild creature may find our table and clear out with the whole set out." "Oh, would they do that?" laughed Jean, interested. "Wouldn't that be funny?" "It might not be so funny if we don't strike a ranch pretty soon," said Holt, looking serious. "We need all that breakfast to help us on our way after the night we've spent." "I will not wash my face until after breakfast," said Jean decidedly, coming back to the rock and seating herself by one of the leaf plates. "Sit down, please, and break your fast, for we are not running any risks on this trip. I want to get to a telegraph office and send word to my mother and father. They will hear about the accident and will be terribly frightened about me. You won't mind my eating with unwashed hands, will you?" "I should worry," declared Holt, seating himself on the other side of the rock with the ease of one who is as much at home on the ground as in a chair. "These crackers are a little limp," said Jean, "but it was the best I could do, considering that they were submerged for a long time." "They're great," said Holt, sampling one. "But how did you happen to have them?" She told him merrily of her visit the day before and how she had saved them. "They're all you have," said Holt suddenly. "You may need the rest of them before we are through. Put these away and keep them till you need them. I'll just eat the berries. I'm used to going without for a long time." "Wasn't your life the only one you had when you risked it to save me?" asked Jean, looking at him earnestly. "I guess you'll get half of all there is, or I won't have any." Holt looked at her admiringly. "That's all right, but I'd rather you saved them. You're a woman." "That may be all right, but I won't," said Jean decidedly. "And I won't eat another bite until you eat yours." He looked at her with a glow of appreciation growing in his eyes. He had never seen a girl like this. "You're all white," he said at last. "You're the real thing. You're a good fellow. I guess we're partners then." He held out his hand as he would have done to a man, and the girl, with a quick appreciation of his words, laid her small berry-stained hand in the big, hard one. "Thank you," she said earnestly. "That rather puts us on an equality, doesn't it? But I'm not so foolish as to think we really are. I know it's only a very little bit that I can do on this expedition. You do all the big, grand, hard things. but you mustn't deny me the chance to do the little things I can do. And sharing, or even going without sometimes, belongs to my part. I haven't forgotten yet that you saved my life." He looked at the little hand wonderingly, and held it gently in his own, with just a slight, lingering, wistful closing of his strong fingers around it. Then let it go as though he were afraid he might crush it. It seemed to him so frail and exquisite and fine. "I can tell you one thing," he said. "You're some improvement on the last partner I had." Jean gave him a swift, relieved look. "That horrid old man?" she asked comprehendingly. He nodded, but searched her face keenly, as if he would make sure of something. He seemed satisfied, however, with the frank look in her clear eyes, and said no more. Perhaps he hoped she would confide in him, or perhaps he liked her all the better that she did not. Who knows? They ate their meager breakfast hungrily, yet lingered over it happily. The morning seemed to each as an exquisite treasure of time loaned to them for this once, and there fell a charm upon them that neither quite understood. Only they were conscious of joy in being alive and having each other. The experiences of the night and the unusual surroundings did away with all conventionalities and feelings of embarrassment they would otherwise have had in their strange plight, and their laughter mingled and ran out among the trees joyously on that early, beautiful morning after the disaster. He led her down to the stream to wash while he made a basket of leaves, pinned together with stems, and filled it full of berries. "We may need them for dinner," he remarked as he went back to the bushes. Jean finished her ablutions, and, washing out her handkerchief, filled it also with berries, and thus provided with a lunch, they started on their way. After coming out of the woods, they climbed first to the highest point of ground near them, and surveyed the landscape in every direction, but nothing more serene on a summer morning could be found anywhere than was before them. Turn which way they would, there was no sign of disaster or wreck. The soft, green hills on every side hid the secret of its location, and the world lay spread before them without a hint of ravage or distress. There was absolutely no way to tell direction except in a general way by the sun, and where the wreck had been it was impossible even to speculate, for they could not tell how they had come in the darkness. This gave a new aspect to their situation. Holt had been thinking during the night that if they could work their way back to the wreck they would probably reach home more quickly, for surely by this time a relief train must have come. But now he saw that it was useless to consider that longer. They must just press on until they come to a house, where possibly they could procure horses, and certainly information as to their whereabouts. There was a reason why he wished to get back to the world as quickly as possible. Yet something taught him to be glad that necessity had given him this day, or part of a day, whichever it was to be, with this girl. He looked down almost tenderly at the bright, trusting face that smiled up at him so bravely. He had a sudden comprehending glimpse of what it must be to a girl, such as he could see she was, to be dropped down into a strange world, far from home and protection, in company with a man about whom she knew nothing. "Tough luck," he said, answering the question in her eyes. "But don't you worry. We'll get out sooner or later." "I'm not worrying," she answered earnestly. "But I was wishing we knew how to send a wireless to my father. I wonder if some day they won't perfect the system so that people can send messages from anywhere without any instruments, if they just know how." "That would be great," said Holt thoughtfully. "I'd send one this minute to the nearest inhabited point for 2 good saddle horses. Can you ride?" "A little. I've never had much opportunity. Father used to keep a horse, but when we moved to our present home he had to give it up. There wasn't really any need for it. But I'm to ride while I'm away visiting my sister." Her face brightened at the thought, and then clouded. "That is, if we ever get there." "Oh, we'll get there all right," said Holt easily, taking his bearings and deciding which way to strike out. "You're Mrs. Harrington's sister, aren't you?" "Why, yes. How did you know?" said the girl with a ring of relief in her voice. "You know my sister, then?" This was almost equivalent to an introduction, and she knew her mother would be particular about that. "I heard you tell the conductor," he said. "Shall we start? We've got a good journey to travel, judging by the look of things. This way," and he led her down the slope out into the open where they could see where they were going. "But you wouldn't have remembered all this time if you hadn't known who she was," she flashed back, smiling. "How pleased Eleanor will be when she knows one of her own friends took care of me and saved my life." Holt's face darkened suddenly, and he did not answer at once. When he did, his voice was cold and hard, like a sudden storm on a sunny day. "I don't think she'd exactly call me her friend." His eyes were narrowed, and his chin was set with a haughty lift. "Well, acquaintance then," said Jean brightly. "Eleanor is a lot older than you, of course. She was married and went away from home when I was just a tiny girl. I haven't seen her all these years, and of course she's changed a great deal." "Yes, I suppose you'd call us acquainted," answered Holt, still in that queer, hard voice. Jean felt it intuitively, but talked on, feeling her way to surer ground. "I wonder if my sister has ever mentioned you in her letters," she said brightly. "She tells me all about the people." "Possibly." You could have cut ice with the sharpness of his tone. Then he added quietly, "My name is Holt, Jasper Holt." He watched her with wide, challenging eyes, but although there was a puzzled look in her face, the name evidently told her nothing. "Jasper! What a beautiful name! I always thought that was the most beautiful word. The walls of the heavenly city are built of jasper, you know." "No, I didn't know." He spoke slowly, almost worshipfully. This truly was a new kind of girl. A citizen, more like, of that heavenly city about which she spoke with such assurance as if it were an actual place, than like a mortal girl. His face was softened, made tender, as he looked at her, and saw the morning shining in her eyes. His haughtiness fell away, and all the goodness and native truth and purity that were hidden in his soul came out and sat upon his face. The people who thought they knew Jasper Holt would not have recognized him thus, walking beside the girl and looking down upon her as one looks upon the face of an angel. Jean looked up, seeing in him only the beauty of his true self, and looking, trusted and was not afraid. End of chapter 4